All right, everyone. It's a good day for us who support Trump because my predictions were all fulfilled last night. In fact, on one thing I got it very slightly wrong, which was that I thought that Trump might come in a bit below his aggregated polling. This is typically the case with frontrunners in Iowa. No, he came in right center of the mark, actually, so he did a couple points better than I expected, winning 98 of the 99 counties in Iowa. Nikki Haley got knocked down to third place by Ron DeSantis, which I'm very, very happy about. In her speech thereafter, she alluded to it now being effectively a two-person race, and people are thinking that she might not have, updated her speech because she expected to get second. Because I would think that would make it a race between Trump and DeSantis more than Trump and Haley. True, in New Hampshire she has the advantage, but now instead of having a tailwind uplifting her, with Ramaswamy dropping out and endorsing Trump and DeSantis looking more feasible, at least than her in Iowa, despite the massive spending. It is still an L for DeSantis, but he did manage to hold on to second place. Haley's comments were just bizarre, and so I think that that's probably plausible. She probably just took the pre-written speech where she expected, I've a little bit ahead in the polls and I've got this tailwind that's helping me, so quite clearly I'll be second place. I'll be the big tiger mama sort of candidate, and so she fails on that. Ramaswamy again dropped out. He did endorse Trump, which is helpful. He was running at 5 in the aggregate in New Hampshire. If I add that to Trump's aggregated totals, you're getting pretty close to 50. And so Haley begins to look less likely to actually manage to pull off a single win. I don't think she will. I'll be talking about the New Hampshire primaries in the next video, though, so I won't get into that right this second. Here's the big takeaway, though. The salt must flow. The amount of cope that I'm seeing right now is horrendously funny. Bill Mitchell practically suffering a nervous breakdown. The left is suffering a breakdown because, they're worried about Trump being the nominee. They've been trying to astroturf Nikki Haley with reverse psychology now for months, and it hasn't really worked. But I think the biggest loser of the night, ultimately, is the DeSantis campaign. I realize that he came in second, and by the way, again, I promise not to insult DeSantis or his fans again. I'll still laugh at the salt when it's there, but you did manage to pull it off. You took Nikki Haley down a peg. For that, the nation owes you a debt of gratitude for having slightly higher turnout than the Haley fans. So I'm happy. I predicted that Ron DeSantis would clinch a narrow second-place victory, although, again, in full admission, I was not nearly fully confident about that. I gave it like a 60-40, you'll remember the other day. And anyway, when you have put all your eggs in one basket and focused only on one state, DeSantis effectively was in Iowa constantly, and you still come in 30 points behind, while second place is better than third, and would have resulted in him leaving, probably endorsing Trump on the way out, by the way. I don't think he would endorse Haley at this point. I think they're in a grudge match, and I think that he would begrudge her if she had managed to clinch against him. I think that Trump would win easily. But when you've spent that kind of money and that kind of time and have, honestly, that much of a ground game in a state, and you can't do more than barely break 20, in a field that was no longer packed, it's only 4 people, 3 of which were viable, that's still an L, to be clear. But I'm not going to rub it in their face because, you did us a solid. You knocked down Haley a few points, probably, by showing her up in the state of Iowa despite being slightly behind in the polling. So another prediction that I made was that DeSantis would come in a bit ahead, and he did. He wasn't expected to fare quite so well. It would have been a disaster for him. Now it's a disaster for Haley. Between that and her bizarre speech where she insinuates that the other 2 people in the race are the viable ones, with Ramaswamy dropping out and endorsing Trump, I don't think she wins New Hampshire. Again, I'll get more into that. The saltiness, though, is the big focus. The amount of cope posting, the cope, there's a wide variety of cope to choose from. It's like looking at a platter with 100 different types of sushi on it and saying, I'm hungry and I love sushi. What should I try first? Well, you can find people, pundits, and so forth having a nervous breakdown. You can find cope in the way of stupid memes, mostly recycled from the last couple of elections, because that's what leftists tend to do. You'll find people saying, well, Trump still can't win in the general. It's all part of the plan. They're going to swap out Biden at the 11th hour, and Trump will be in prison, so he will lose against Gavin Newsom or Whitmer or somebody like that. Maybe Mitch McConnell will cross the aisle, run as a Democrat. He'll be president or something like that. I'm seeing weird conspiracy theories actually more than anything else. Trump is a rapist. Trump is disqualified under the Constitution, under Section 3, etc., etc., etc. It's a lot of cope. The Haley fans are coping the most, but they're elusive. DeSantis fans are easy to find because like their candidate has redeeming qualities. With Nikki Haley fans, I've run across maybe 3 accounts that ostensibly support her. I think a couple of them might be bot accounts anyway. I'm wondering how the hell she even got to the level that she did in Iowa, despite the ad spending and stuff, and ostensibly, again, having that tailwind. I've never seen anyone praise her for the most part. Again, like 2 or 3 accounts on Twitter. That's literally it. Nobody likes Nikki Haley, yet somehow, she's got a core of support. In New Hampshire, it's larger. It's, in some polling, she was close to within single digits. Again, more analysis later. But the cope is fun. And so for right now, for the next 24 hours, celebrate and look up some good salt. By the way, if you find any nervous breakdown moments from people that have Trump derangement syndrome, you can always DM me those on Twitter because, of course, I'm going to live stream later. And half the live stream will probably be still talking about Iowa, predictions for New Hampshire. And I would like to point one other thing out. Technically, I argue against my own self-interest in hoping that Trump just ends it by New Hampshire or maybe South Carolina, because I get a shit ton of extra support from the live streams that I do during the primary results. I'll go live in New Hampshire, but if everyone else drops out and it's literally Trump v. Asa Hutchinson or something like that, I guess I can cover the Nevada and South Carolina races. I mean, I'll still go live on Super Tuesday because it's Super Tuesday, but if you've got an effective suspension of the primaries because there's only one candidate with name recognition, who cares? By the way, Doug Burgum, for what it's worth, also endorsing Trump the other day, right ahead of the Iowa caucus. Burgum did ride around a point, so again, in new national polling, which we're sure to get in the next week before New Hampshire goes, you can expect Trump to have risen further. Between Burgum and Ramaswamy, the writing is pretty much on the wall. Effectively, this race was over right as it began. It wasn't even like a 500-meter sprint. It was more like a 5-meter brisk walk or something like that. The writing was on the wall. I kept seeing people proclaiming, well, Ramaswamy's actually going to win. The polls are wrong. And I tried to point out the kind of metrics of poll shift that you would need for that to happen are not even possible. No matter how flawed your polling methodology is, you couldn't concoct a scenario in which that sort of gap could be made up. Even DeSantis or Haley, which had more support, could not make up the gap. It would require, number one, that the polls be systemically wrong in a singular direction against one single candidate and for one other candidate. It couldn't be a spread because then the numbers wouldn't be there. And you'd have to have depressed turnout. And you would have to, at the same time, have a last-minute surge. And the polling has to be wrong, the turnout differential has to be in one single direction, and everything else has to compact just in favor of one other candidate. In the end, the polls were remarkably accurate. In fact, if we look at the aggregate and we look at the result, we're talking about a wiggle room of a couple of points, well within the margin of error. So to people who told me, no, Sticks, you're not supposed to trust the polls, I don't. I trust aggregated polls to an extent. That's about all. Peace out.